I would like to start this Time Webber World 2020, which normally we celebrate in a big hall with 5, 6, 7, 800 guests. Today it's much more guests outside there, so that's very good. But I so much hope that latest in 1 year in the summer we'll meet all again in person, and strengthens our connection. But that's the idea of Time Webber. The idea behind Time Webber is your connection to the information field. So the real purpose why we do this is because we want to connect. We want to connect people, and we want to connect the people to what they are and themselves, and we want to connect the people to become in themselves more one, more whole. So that's almost became a cliche. I would like to talk in the beginning of this Time Webber World Day a little about wholeness and the information field. And of course, we are living, it's almost not necessary to mention anymore, we're living in a very special period where something happened which affected everyone on this planet. Almost everyone became restricted in their way of how they could move, how they could behave, how they could meet other people. And everyone is aware that this affects us globally and individually very much. And this is something very deeply connected to our own story, to the history of the human being. Because what is really the distinction between us as a human being and everything else in this world is that we are conscious and we are a self-conscious human being. So just let us try to understand what it means, self-conscious. Self-consciousness means that we are actually conscious about ourselves. It's a self-reflective process constantly going on. This means we are many times concerned with ourselves and sometimes only concerned with ourselves. And this creates the center of our self-consciousness, which we call I am. And later we say, I am this, I am that, and we collect a whole structure, psychological structure around ourselves, which we call the ego. We call it, it's my world. Like we have the Time Webber world, everyone has his own world. And this world is around us every day, but it is focused. Individual consciousness is isolated consciousness because there is a price we pay for our individuality. Because individual consciousness is exactly one perspective on the cosmos. From a little corner in the universe, we are all individual, self-centered, small islands or monads, as Leibniz called them, which are isolated somewhere in a corner of the universe and having only this one perspective. Everyone else just standing somewhere else has a completely different perspective. Now I see Eva. If I turn around, I see the golden Time Webber, and if I look in this direction, you can't see it. There's a cameraman, and here's another cameraman. So perspective is everything. It's all about the perspective I'm taking. And my perspective is unique. The process of my consciousness is isolated, and this is a price we are paying for our individuality. It's a very, very high price because what we lost is the cosmos, is the ability to see everything from so many different perspectives, to see the cosmos as one. Because if somebody speaks, the speaking, the words, are not really prepared by the consciousness. They're prepared by our unconscious. So if I'm talking and talking, doesn't mean that I'm conscious about every word I'm speaking, but it's always prepared by the unconscious. So this unconscious preparation of the future is taking place in every moment. So our consciousness is not just isolated from the cosmos and restricted to one perspective, but it's also disconnected from a very, very important part from itself, which is the unconscious. The bigger part of ourselves is not even aware, we are not even aware about this bigger part of ourselves, about the consciousness. So now we have this situation, it's a historical situation, which is kind of new for humanity. If you look at the history of humanity, it's actually a long history. It goes 4 billion years ago. Not that we were here present on this planet as a human beings already, but we parts within ourselves, like cells and the DNA, all these aspects of human life, which are still affecting us here now, very simple living entities which had already a nervous system. And all this is present with us. We can even see this process of evolution in the biological structure of our brain. All the stages are still present. So that's a very long story and history. So this isolation of the self in this world is almost absolute. And we are trying to reconnect. When we are born in this world, we are connected. And this connection is very, very strong. And the next years is all about realizing I'm actually separate from my mother. And at one point, we see there's another guy running around, and later we learn to call him father. And in this way, our world expands. It expands. But it's all based on the development of self-consciousness, which the price for the self-consciousness is isolation. So the same historical process which happened while consciousness was awakened in humanity, which is not very far ago, it's not 4 billion years ago, but maybe just a few 10,000 of years, and it was only completed, this process, maybe 3, 4, 5,000 years ago when the big civilization started. So our life means that in the beginning we are still one, because we didn't develop the self-consciousness. We are still one, we are one with our mother. And then kind of isolate ourselves, and then puberty, the fight is there. And all the big myths and mythologies of the world talk about this struggle for individuality and how it leads to isolation, and how they then again, you became successful, you became adult, you have your own kingdom. When you reach this point, the idea of reconnecting, the necessity comes almost like an inner pressure. Pressure which directs us again in the other direction, to understand, my God, there is a cosmos, there is a universe, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's all connected, but I'm isolated. How can I get back? And then this is actually what in Europe is called the quest. As I showed you in the entrance hall of the castle, there's a picture of Parzival on the way to the Holy Grail. Actually, he doesn't even know what he's searching for, but he has an intuition. It's about wholeness. So we have this situation now. We have it. Isolation. And if we look in the last 3-4 months, what happened on this planet is that a world which became globally connected had to re-isolate itself. The countries had to close their borders. The people were locked in their houses. There was a very strong isolation even among family members, and a lot of caution, and everything was visualized as a potential threat. So we were refocused, and we were reminded again about what is anyway there, the isolation of our consciousness, which we try to minimize by having as many friends in Facebook as possible, which is actually good that we have so many friends, so you are there and can listen to us in Facebook today. But the connecting ourselves in the internet is also a symptom of our individual isolation. So what I would like to make a point on this, which is very, very significant, because here we have the one cosmos, which is beyond time. It's even beyond space, because if you look at modern physics, space is emergent. It's not a priori, it's not there from eternally, but the space which actually separates us is also emergent. So, but there is a big, classically one would say, a contradiction between the cosmos in its, I would say, all perspective, it's all inclusive, I don't have the English word for it, it's all including all perspectives and combining them. And the individualized, isolated consciousness, which is unique perspective. These two perspectives are complementary to each other. My passion in science was physics. In physics, actually, for centuries, we never talked about an individual perspective, but the cosmos was always looked at as beyond the perspectives. So modern physics, first theory of relativity by Albert Einstein, but then later even so quantum physics, it became more evident, much more evident, that we cannot really make physics without understanding that we are looking at the world from an individual perspective. Quantum physics is all about suddenly an observer entered into the field of physics, and nobody had an idea what is an observer, but whole quantum physics doesn't work without an observer. An observer is nothing else than this isolated, fragmented consciousness which we are. So the whole mess of modern physics, which even is in a strong contradiction between quantum physics on one side and on the other side, theory of relativity, which don't fit together. It's about not understanding the point of the observer as the most important thing to understand how we are in this universe and what is our connection to this universe. So there is a complementarity between the whole and the individual isolation of consciousness. And this complementarity results in a very, very important effect, which is the basis of our understanding and our perception and how we function in this world. And this is called quantum entanglement. Whenever we have such a complementarity between a whole system and its subsystems, as we have here between the individual isolation and the universal interconnectedness, the result of such a complementarity is always that these elements, the subsystems, among each other become quantum entangled. So that's an amazing result. It's an amazing result. I don't want to call it quantum entanglement in the classical sense of quantum physics, but I want to call it generalized quantum entanglement, which follows a much weaker idea of quantum physics. So, but this is the assumption on which I base my whole worldview, that we're living in a world where our relationship to the one cosmos is experienced by all the elements within this cosmos, and especially the individual consciousness, are quantum entangled with each other. So each of us, even as we fragment in this universe into parts like body, mind, and soul, and even the body is fragmented, like it consists of organs, and the organs consist of cells, and the cells consist of biomolecules, and they consist of atoms and elementary particles. The fragmentation and isolation you can bring down to a very, very elementary level. So all these levels reconnect through generalized quantum entanglement. Let me just call it quantum entanglement for the purpose of simplicity. So quantum entanglement is what makes us and reconnects us to the universe. So, and from this, I came to a very clear definition of what the information field is. And this is a very important basis of the way how I think and what is behind time waver. In my definition, the information field is the sum total, the set of all the quantum entanglements which connect myself and which connect myself to my environment. So the information field is a sum total of all these generalized quantum entanglements within myself and connecting me to the cosmos. So this clear definition of the information field again has two sides. There is the individual information field, which is the quantum entanglements which concern me with my connection with my environment, and the connections within myself, which make me a whole, like between the body, the consciousness, and the unconscious. This I call the individual information field. And the definition of the global information field, which we all talk a lot about, is that all these beings and all the objects, again, are quantum entangled. So the wholeness is the global information field. It's a set of all the individual consciousness and objects or events in this universe, and their sum total of entanglement. So this is interesting because now in this definition, if you go a little deeper into it, you will see that the global information field is actually timeless, because entanglement is not just within space, but it's also within time. And this is very important information. I'm not talking about something very abstract, but I'm talking about something which we are perceiving every moment. There is a lot of research on that our brain, in its quantum aspects, has the ability to perceive quantum entanglements with its environment and with even beyond the narrow concept of space and time. So we have a part of us. It's not the consciousness, because the consciousness relates directly to the physical processes in our brain, but the whole subconscious psyche, which is right now preparing the words which I will talk in 3 or 4 minutes. This unconscious, which is the basis of my consciousness, which is the first thing I actually have to reconnect to become a whole human being, to become a whole soul. This subconsciousness, as related to the deep quantum processes in my brain, is able, according to this research, to perceive quantum entanglements. And that's a very, very amazing discovery. I don't have really time. It's not the place to go very deeply into it, but it has a lots of consequences. So this amazing definition of the information field shows how important quantum entanglement is, and for our life. And there is a rule. The rule is the more we isolate ourselves, the stronger the field of quantum entanglements becomes. Because imagine if we would be a whole, if we would reconnect within ourselves and with our environment, then there is much less quantum entanglements necessary, because the more we experience, if we become the wholeness, the less quantum entanglements needs to be there, because quantum entanglements are only there if the oneness divides, if it fragments. Otherwise, we don't have to talk about it. So the more we get into isolation, the more quantum entanglements there, it means the richer the individual information field becomes. Because the information field is collecting all the lost and therefore hidden relations which we have within ourselves and with the world. So if we overcome this isolation and more experience the oneness, less and less quantum entanglements are there, and the individual information field becomes less dense. So the more density is there, the more we experience in our unconscious the pressure from the information field actually to reconnect. And this is actually what is the purpose of Time Weaver, is to reconnect. It's all about reconnection. It's not focusing on any problems or symptoms or even diseases. That is not the case. We are focusing on re-establishing the lost connections in the information field. Sometimes we say reconnect to the information field. This means reconnect to the global information field, to the original oneness from which we are coming. So this has very, very deep implications. And it has also implications for what is the next step, what is the next big step which is in front of us, which is ahead of us in TimeWeaver. Because in the last, how many years? 13 years, we have developed the technology of TimeWeaver, we have improved it, we have spread TimeWeaver all over the world. It's in, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 countries, we find TimeWeavers. And people working with it and working on reconnecting. So the technology is there. So the next step we have to really focus on, I think this is really the next step also in the evolution of TimeWeaver, is to reconnect deeply within ourselves. I would like to mention a state of meditation. It's a state of becoming whole. It's an observation without an observation. In many techniques of meditation, you try to overcome the isolation of the observer. And if you overcome this, then the distinction, the isolation from the cosmos becomes less and less prominent, and therefore the pressure of the entanglement is much less. We actually clearing our individual information field. That's the work which we are doing externally with TimeWeaver. If we work with TimeWeaver ourselves, or normally we work with someone using TimeWeaver, a therapist or a practitioner or whoever, a professional who works with TimeWeaver. So we work on clearing our information field. We work on reconnecting ourselves. So this we are doing with a little help from outside. But it's like an alchemy. Alchemy was a process outside for reconnecting. At one point, the people recognized it's an internal process. So this, I think, is the next step, that we are not only relying on the technology, we are becoming more and more aware that the technology of TimeWeaver is helping us to reconnect within ourselves. So the more we, as TimeWeaver users, and those who experienced an application of TimeWeaver on ourselves, realize, and through reconnecting themselves internally also, the more strong the whole information field of TimeWeaver becomes. Because TimeWeaver on the physical level, on the technological level, is something which you can hold in your hands, which has 4 or 5 kilograms, like this very special edition of TimeWeaver. It was for the 10th anniversary of TimeWeaver, the golden TimeWeaver. But this is external. Internally, TimeWeaver has its own information field. It's all the information about reconnecting. It's what connects us as users and practitioners of TimeWeaver to form one strong global consciousness. Because the global information field, as the individual information field is connected to our individual consciousness, the global information field is connected to the global consciousness. And this is what we are all connected with, and this is what becomes more and more prominent, and especially in times where we have to isolate or we were isolated, it became a strong issue. Therefore, I believe it's a very special historical moment for humanity, because we experience this big change of everything is possible to isolation, and now slowly trying to get back to normality. And this was happening outside, but it's everything happening outside, especially the whole, affecting the whole humanity, means that it shows there is a process inside which has, which is actually originally much more significant. So this, I think, is a big wake-up call for humanity, for each individual of us, and I think today, where we have a very full program, we will talk much more about it.